All right, guys. Our next guest makes introductions obsolete. You already know him from his excellent work on the ESPN analyst desk, Ariel and the Bad Guy. His many iconic battles with the greats of MMA, a former WEC champion, UFC title challenger, the largest arms in West Linn, Oregon. Oh, and he just happens to be hosting Submission Underground 18 this weekend, headlined by Mason Fowler versus Vinny Maghalaes. Chael Sonnen, welcome back to Submission Radio. Man, you must be exhausted with all those accolades, but how are you?
What's happening, dudes? No, man, that was beautiful of you to say about me, but no, I'm bored. I'm on the other end of it. I'm looking for more things to do. How are you fellas? That's what matters.
Well, we are good, and sometimes it's just really great to have an American gangster visit Submission Radio. I mean, Casper mentioned all of those things. How do you have time to see your family, still train, get SUG going? How do you fit all of this into your life, man?
Oh man, I gotta tell you, I got plenty of time. I don't find time, I make time. I can do a lot more, and I don't mean that any other way than we're bored out here, man. This pandemic, everything's so boring that my state specifically was even on fire. We got some good rain, and that's now behind us. I'm just saying, there hasn't been much to do. I'm looking for more to do. You got an idea? Invite me.
All right, well, like Robbie Williams, let us entertain you and let us pick your brain. Before we talk Submission Underground 18 this weekend, very excited about that. Obviously, want to talk MMA with you, and we are still very much in this aftermath of UFC 253 with Israel Adesanya's performance over Paulo Costa. When you look at the magnitude of this event, Chael, the headlines and the numbers that came out of it, the stare down broke the Conor Khabib record for most views in terms of stare down numbers. I mean, it speaks to Adesanya not only as a star, but his as a self-promoter. So as one of the greatest self-promoters of all time, Chael, what impresses you more, his fighting or his self-promoting?
His fighting, but I do agree with you. I see what you see. I mean, this guy thinks of everything, right? I mean, 2 fights ago, he even entertained us on the way to the ring, with that choreographed dance with some childhood buddies. He's just fun, and he fights really well. He's getting better, which is very rare for a world champion to do. Generally, you become the world champion, you're on top, you try to maintain. He's actually getting better. He's showing growth within his skills, and then he never leaves the ring without lining up the next fight before he goes. Very simple recipe, but very few guys do it, and I do appreciate that he does.
It's interesting. He told Oscar Willis in the Mac Live that his favorite feud was you and Anderson Silva, but I'm curious, Chael, what do you make of Paulo Costa? Do you think mistakes were made during fight week? We saw there was that run-in, Costa very friendly, shaking hands, kind of a bit too friendly for a lot of people's liking. And then during fight week and during the fight seemed very, very friendly. Did Paulo Costa sort of give it up a little bit too soon and didn't sort of hold on to that grudge long enough, in your opinion? Did he kind of hurt himself?
That's an interesting take. I had never considered that there was like a psychological shutdown with Paulo. I am now that you bring that to my attention. But, physically is how I was watching that fight. The X's and the O's, it looked like he just never got started. And I don't know that that's a fault to him or if we should be crediting Adesanya, right? I mean, fight guys always talk about range and keeping a guy at the end of your punches. That's a very lazy analysis that even the fight guys that go out there and perpetuate could not explain to the audience. It's very rare that you have somebody who understands range. Even a nice, long, tall guy doesn't generally know how to use it, but Adesanya does. So when we talk about Paulo was never getting going, well, the first thing Paulo had to do was get inside. Izzy did such a good job of keeping him at bay, using that straight kick, eventually working the jabbing, but he kept the shorter Paulo at bay. It didn't allow for very much offense to get started.
I mean, it was no doubt a star-making performance. Now, obviously, the big talk after the fight was Israel's chest, the asymmetry that people noticed. He's since spoken to your good friend, Ariel Helwani, and said that he doesn't really know what it is, but he's gotten tests and he's sort of looking into it. He's waiting to see what comes back. And honestly, I really like his honesty in transparency in saying that, he doesn't know what it is, but he's getting it checked out. He's also denied ever taking any steroids, but a lot of people have sort of already labeled him as a cheater, as a steroid user without knowing all the facts. I mean, I'm wondering, as MMA's resident doctor and expert in the field, Chael, do you think people have jumped the gun on Israel here and sort of labeled him too soon, too early?
Oh, of course. Come on, that's not how it works. You don't look at a guy and do an eye test. That's never been the standard. He's passing the scientific test of USADA, but somehow you saw something on. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. I wouldn't warrant it with the response, but I am with you. I appreciate his transparency. It sounds like a medical issue. He certainly did not owe us an explanation on that, but I definitely took him at his word. He's talking about it hurt and it's sore and he noticed it himself and he's getting MRIs done. I mean, if he wants to update us, great, but if he doesn't, man, that's his personal info.
I'm wondering, I mean, with Israel in his last couple of fights, it almost seems like fighters have been almost defeated and unable to execute their game plans before the fights even start. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of Anderson Silva. Famously, you were the only guy that really was able to go in there when Silva was doing his main run and go in there and, put your game plan to play and, be able to dominate Anderson in all those rounds. Do you see that mystique of Israel Adesanya starting to take over in fighters' minds before they were able to actually fight? And we saw Paulo Costa never even went for his game plan like he usually does. Yoel Romero just stood there and didn't throw any punches. Is this going to be a theme?
Yeah, I do think we're seeing it. Anderson's a great example of that. Mike Tyson, was always very obvious. Mike Tyson would scare those guys in the locker room before they ever walked out there. Chris Cyborg has an element of that to her. But I do see it with Adesanya. That's just going to be a hard night. There's no way to fight Adesanya, even if you beat him. There's no way that you're not going to be in a lot of pain. It's very likely you're going to the hospital. Even the guy that's going to take his belt some way, you're going to get beat up in the process. That's just the way he fights. That's what happens when you got those great kickboxers with the good wrestling defense. If you're stuck on your feet with a guy, even if you get the better of him, it's a hard proposition. Guys are getting intimidated. He stays in their head. He stays focused. And I think the real thing that's intimidating guys is he is getting better. Every time I watch Adesanya, I see a better Adesanya that fought Paulo Costa would kick Adesanya who fought Yoel Romero's ass. And I'm not talking about the performance there. I'm talking about he is better now than he was the last time we saw him.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention that. Every time the performances are getting more and more interesting.
By the way, can you guys see me?
Of course.
Me, right?
Of course.
Okay. All right, what do you think of this shirt? I'm a little self-conscious. I don't know that I love this shirt. My wife got me this shirt, and it was kind of hard to get. She had to order it, and all these things happen. The shirt comes. The shirt sucks. I was wildly disappointed, but my wife was so proud of it. What do you think of the shirt? Is the shirt weird?
I want to know, why don't you wear the shirt on ESPN? Why are you wearing the shirt on Submission Radio? You're wearing the sketchy shirt with us?
We're the guinea pig show.
And it is so hot, by the way. It is so hot up here. I told you my state was on fire, so we still got some of these heat. And I got to roll the sleeves. It's the pocket I don't know about. Why is the pocket not the same color as the rest of the shirt?
I like about the shirt. The pocket is the only thing I might like about that shirt, Chael, if I'm being honest.
Now that's why I know I can trust you, right? Now I'm going to start coming to you for wardrobe advice because you were straight with me. Thank you for that.
No worries. In the comment section below, people are going to say, well, these guys wear beanies and hoodies every time they do their show, so don't take advice from a couple of Aussie larrikins. But let me ask you this, man, just quickly. With this whole Anderson Silva comparison, Israel Adesanya, in a very short amount of time, has been able to dispose of some of the best guys in the division. And it's such a short amount of time. What do you think he needs to do to be able to take over from Anderson's legacy and then become the guy with the most dominant legacy in the middleweight division?
Well, and I'll tell you, he's already doing it. Look, here's the good news for him, right? He's kind of in the opposite spot that Jon Jones just found himself. Jon Jones had nothing to do at 205 that was interesting. That wasn't fair to Jon because the only reason he didn't have anything is he'd already done it all. He'd been there so long and so unblemished, but he ran out of things to do. When you look at Adesanya, at least for the short term, hey, he's got 5 more fights. He's eventually going to have to rematch with Whitaker. He's calling for the Cannonier fight. I think that Jack the Joker's got to be looked at. Darren Till's not going to just go away. Eventually, some new name is going to emerge, or even a 70-pounder pops up. We're hearing names like Chimaev, just by example. I'm only saying for you, he's got a lot of things left to do, which is really good news, because I think that if we are to take a look at him, his frame, even his youth, I think we all come to the same conclusion, which is sooner or later, he is a light heavyweight. But that is that's something he can really kick the can on. He doesn't need to do it. He's got the next 2 years lined up right now in terms of compelling, interesting matches. Even Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman was calling for that fight. I don't predict for you that Chris is going to get it, but I do predict for you I would be interested in that. From a stylistic standpoint, that match would interest me.
How quickly do you think Chimaev could sort of climb the ranks and work his way to a title shot against Israel Adesanya? I mean, at this rate, the way he's fighting, we could see it by the end of the year in a hilarious way.
Oh, definitely. No, Chimaev will be fighting for a championship in one of the 2 weight classes by this time next year. That prediction there based on nothing, but I think he's more likely to do it at middleweight. Not to mention, Chimaev called for the fight. I mean, the only thing you have to do to fight Adesanya is get Adesanya's interest. Adesanya doesn't give a damn about the rankings, and Dana respects Adesanya enough that he'll listen and try to do what he wants. I bring that to you because the Yoel Romero fight made no kind of sense. And Adesanya said to Dana, he goes, look, I want to fight that guy. That's why I got in this business, is to fight guys I don't like. I don't like him. You're telling me I can't have him. That means you're punishing me for my success. That's not fair. And Dana goes, you know what? I've never heard that argument before, but you're right. You got the fight. I bring that to your attention because if we want to talk about Chimaev and Adesanya, all you have to do is make Adesanya interested. If he's interested, win or lose. Man, this guy calls for some fights that even the odds makers don't think he's going to win. He'll walk out there and do it, but you got to get his interest.
I'm very curious what you think, because at the end of that Ariel interview, Israel said that he wants to fight by the end of the year. Now, Whitaker's booked, Cannonier's booked, Hermanson and Till, they're all booked. But he seems pretty keen. Who do you think that he could possibly fight at the end of the year? The way he is with Dana White, where he seems to get the fights that he wants, even if it might be ill-advised. Who do you think it could be? Do you think we could see him go to light heavyweight? Maybe fight Jan to keep him busy?
No, okay, so it's interesting you say that. And I love that you said it, because here's my two guys. You want to know the top two guys right now? Chris Weidman and Chimaev. Now, it's for the reasons that you just laid out. The calendar's booked. The top guys, the most likely suspects, they all got dance partners. So, and I do take Adesanya at his word. He's not one of these guys that says, I want to go and do. He's a legit badass. You can, if Adesanya tells you something, no matter how crazy the idea might sound, he's not joking. So, you've got Chimaev that says he wants to fight. You have Chris Weidman that says he wants to fight. I mean, look, if it's like a job interview, if no one else shows up, it's your job. So in this case, there's two guys that have shown up. It sounds like Chimaev and Weidman are going to have to battle this back and forth, or Adesanya's not going to get his way and he's going to have to wait till 2021. So within the parameters that you gave me of if he's going to fight this year and it can't be X, Y, and Z because they're lined up, you're down to Chimaev and Weidman just by a show of hands.
Well, I'll tell you what, it would be interesting if either one of those guys lined up against him next. Let me ask you this. Jon Jones right now is not a champion anymore. He's doing this transition to heavyweight. You got Israel, who's the champion. He just had one of the hottest pay-per-views of the year. If those guys were to fight tomorrow, who would be the A side?
Jon Jones would be the A side, because if they fought tomorrow, that meant that they would weigh whatever they weigh, and Jon would have a little bit of size on him. On the other hand, Adesanya would be in shape because he just came out of a fight. Adesanya is going to beat him either way. Adesanya is a better fighter than Jon Jones. He's more crafty. He's more tactical. He's faster. He's equally as long. Adesanya beats Jon Jones. The question is, how hard would he have to work? If it's a full training camp and everything's even and they weigh close to the same, okay, great. He's probably not going to have to go the full 5 rounds. If you threw him in there tomorrow, it might be a longer fight. Adesanya still beats him.
You know, I also wanted to ask you, Chael, on the same night, and I think you'll appreciate this, on the same night that Israel Adesanya got the win, or the same weekend, I should say, Conor McGregor kind of stole the news, got the attention on himself by dropping the Manny Pacquiao poster. He says he's fighting Manny. Then a few days later, it looks like he's fighting Dustin Poirier in an exhibition bout in boxing for charity. And I'm wondering, you know, as someone who sort of understands promotion and leverage, what exactly is Conor McGregor aiming for? He's in a bit of a feud with Dana White. There was the leaked DMs, but what's the ultimate goal? Why not just fight Dustin, you know, in the UFC as the fight has been offered at the moment?
I got to tell you, there is something that we're all missing here, and I don't know what it is. And I've spent a meaningful period of time even calling friends in the office, you know, asking Dana directly on this. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it too, but there is definitely something that we don't know. Conor says that he wants to fight. I take him at his word. Dana would love for Conor to fight. We all understand that. Conor Mania is a very real thing. For some reason, they're not coming together. And we've heard all the nasty rumors and the legal issues, and it was just a big PR mess. Look, it looks like he outran all of that. Whether they're true or not, it looks like those are behind us now, so I don't suggest that it's that. Ariel Helwani thinks it's very clear that Dana just wants to stall this until he can get a live gate because Conor does so well at the gate. I think that is a very simplistic notion. I think that Ariel is wrong. But I don't think that Ariel is wrong for bringing it up because there's obviously something here that we are not figuring out yet. As far as his fight with Pacquiao, he's not boxing Pacquiao. But as far as the Poirier, we've been told by the UFC that is officially faxed over and that offer's there. We'll see what Conor says. I don't know. By the way, I don't know that I want him to take the fight. I mean, I do want to see Conor. If those are my choices, I see Conor or I don't see Conor. I'd rather see Conor. I just think there's more interesting things out there. I mean, what are we doing with Nick Diaz, by example? If Conor's looking to contend and come back for a championship, okay, great. But the only one that's saying that is Dana White. I've never heard Conor say that he wants to do that. I've never seen Khabib show an interest in doing Conor again. So if we're only having Conor at rare times and they're just for fun spectacles, let's make it the funnest spectacle we can.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. Nick Diaz versus Conor McGregor would be a fantastic fight. We saw the first two fights with Nate. How do you think this fight with Nick would go?
Okay, well, so Nick's been gone for a while. I mean, that's one of the things. Nick has been gone for a period of time. So I think that we'd have to get some kind of exposure in there to Nick. I think that we can also trust that Nick is durable. He can hold up and he can box himself. So maybe Conor couldn't just go to straight striking against Nick and put him away and put him down, and that Nick can hold up all night long. You know, Conor doesn't have very many weaknesses. The guy doesn't have much kryptonite out there, but he stated by his own admittance that, you know, at times he gets tired. So I think you could make a compelling argument and go do that match, but the buildup and the stare downs and all of the other stuff that just makes for a fun spectacle. If that's what we're doing here, then let's quit lying about it. Let's quit lying about we're building contenders. Unless we are. If Conor comes out and changes his great that but I haven't heard him do that. I mean, he wanted to box this day and go 55 this day and go 170. It looks like he's just having some fun. I'm all for it. I like to have fun. But let's make it a fun. I don't get what's fun about Poirier. They've already fought. Why are we here? What's the point of this?
Better than Diego Sanchez, I guess. Let me ask you about this feud that he's having with Dana White, because it kind of reminds me of going to the pro wrestling fans when Stone Cold Steve Austin had that feud with Vince McMahon, and then we missed out on a few of those prime years of him in the WWE. And here we are with Conor McGregor and Dana White. And of course, the common theme here is you can never really win against Vince McMahon, and you can never really win against Dana White. You're a guy that's had up and down relationships with Dana yourself, but do you think he's making a mistake by making this feud, this rivalry with Dana so public? And do you think it might go back and backfire on him?
Well, look, nothing good is going to come from it, okay? So, yeah, the house always wins, all right? You're dealing with the boss in Las Vegas. The house always wins. And getting to one of these pissing matches, I've just never seen a guy win it. I've seen a number of guys do it, and for whatever reason, they get a little comfortable with Dana. Dana's the boss. And over a period of time, he's such a nice guy, you might think that you're friends. But when you get a little bit too comfortable and then you think you're going to come and talk back, that's not the way that it works. You don't walk in the boss's office and flip the desk over. At least you don't do it twice. Now, I think that Conor can work through this. I know Dana's willing to work through this. Dana has to put up with headaches every single day that I would not put up with. If I was in Dana's spot, that's true. But he does. He's willing to. So these guys will work it out, but Conor's not going to do any better because of it. For Conor to be able to go and box Pacquiao, just by example, Dana White has to sign off on that. Dana White helped Conor to fight Floyd. If it was not for Dana White saying, yes, I'll amend your contract and allow you to do this, Conor doesn't have $100 million right now. I mean, just in all fairness, Conor owes Dana. If Conor doesn't see it that way, he's going to see it that way eventually. And you can ask Dana to honor your contract, but he's going to do that for everybody. Or you can have Dana do you a favor. And I will tell you from personal experience, you're much better. Take the favor over the money. If he wants to go fight Pacquiao and now he thinks he can call Dana and go, hey, would you do me a solid? What do you think that answer is going to be? No.
Yeah, absolutely see your point. Dana's obviously been banging the drum on this Conor Khabib rematch. Khabib doesn't really want it. It seems like he didn't really want to do the Ultimate Fighter, didn't want to be around Conor for that long. He wants GSP instead. And there's obviously hurdles with making both fights. So Khabib Conor 2 or Khabib GSP, which one do you think is more likely that we'll see, somewhere down the line?
Oh, I don't think the GSP is very likely. I want it to be. That's a dream fight for all of us, myself included. And I think Conor would do it. I mean, I think that he would. You can say whatever you want about Conor McGregor. If you say he's a coward, that's just simply not true. Conor will fight anybody. You can pick the weight class. You can even pick the sport and the rules. That guy will make that walk, for better or worse, but he'll show up. I have to tell you, though, at the time that Dana started saying, hey, we're going to do this again, we're going to do it again, there was a lot more buzz and excitement around it. And I know that they could build that back up, but I think the reason Dana was hanging his hat on that is it was just such a big and massive fight. It's not a bigger fight than George St. Pierre versus Khabib. There's no fight that is. St. Pierre versus Khabib, biggest fight you can make in MMA.
Wow. Well, before they can even get to that fight, Khabib's got to make it through UFC 254. And I'm curious, man, Justin Gaethje so dangerous, but also a guy that's willing to pull the trigger in the most dangerous of moments, where a lot of people, when they step in there against Khabib, they get beaten by the moment. They can't execute their game plan. And it seems like Justin Gaethje has all the skills required to possibly be the man to beat Khabib. Do you think he's able to do it? What's your prediction for it?
I would predict that Khabib is going to win, but I would not debunk anything that you just said. And it is a very interesting match. Look, Khabib wins every fight the same. He throws you down and bludgeons you. But Justin Gaethje's never been held down and bludgeoned. That's one of the problems. And Justin Gaethje also knows how to scramble and get back up to his feet. These guys that Khabib has held down are not wrestlers. They're jiu-jitsu guys. They're not trained to turn around, hand fight, stand up, and get away. And I don't know that Gaethje has been refining those skills enough over the years. I could tell you Justin Gaethje in college would not get taken down and held down by Khabib. Justin Gaethje now, if he's gotten away from his wrestling, I don't really know what that training looks like. I know that he's working out every day with Kamaru Usman, who's a fantastic wrestler. And I would trust that that's going to help him. But positionally, it is very interesting. And I also don't buy into the theory that Khabib has to take you down. I'm suggesting for you a historical fact that Khabib does take you down to beat you up. I don't suggest that he has to. He's ended up at his feet a couple of times. He struggled to get Conor McGregor down and then dropped Conor McGregor with something Floyd Mayweather couldn't do. Khabib could not get Ally Aquinta down. It turned into a straight-up boxing contest, and he outstruck Ally Aquinta. So Khabib has a couple of options. This isn't just a grappler versus striker, but I think he's going to have a hard time taking Gaethje down.
And before we go to SUG, because we're very excited about the event, just one final thing. You mentioned Kamaru Usman, and I want to bring up the welterweight division for you very, very quickly. Colby Covington was on the show this week. He's angling for this Jorge Masvidal fight. Masvidal, it doesn't seem like wants to even really mention Covington at this point. Doesn't seem like he really wants the fight. I suppose it's a tough matchup, and for him, that Nate rematch would make a little bit more sense. What do you think the UFC should do with Covington next? Do you think it makes sense to do this Masvidal fight at this stage? Do you think it should be someone else? What's your thought on the subject?
Yeah, so it's really tough, right? Like, you and I sit around as fans, and we just throw out what the biggest match is. It doesn't work that way. I mean, I think we had discovered that when we were breaking down middleweight a moment ago. But you have to look at who's available. Who isn't lined up? I mean, as much as Masvidal thought he was going to get a rematch with Usman, Usman is lined up to fight Burns. Oh, and by the way, they haven't even announced the date of that fight. I thought that fight was, like, coming right up. Then I found out it might be in December. And then I heard from Kamaru himself, they're looking at February of next year. So I don't think that Masvidal wants to sit out, and because that would put him out to, summer of next year? He's not going to do that. Colby's certainly not going to wait around. So if you're looking at the pieces of the puzzle that you have, somebody's going to have to jump on the Leon Edwards grenade. And or I guess, did Wonder Boy? Maybe Wonder Boy already did. Am I speaking that? Wonder Boy stepped
You're right.
up to that, right?
Yeah. He wants that fight.
So, and then the other problem that these guys have, Colby's a top contender any way you want to do it. Masvidal's a champion right now. People don't like to admit it, but I watched them put a belt around his waist that nobody's taken from him. You got the top guys right now, but if you're not careful, if you're not watching yourself and guarding that house at all times, Chimaev's going to leapfrog over both of you. So anytime we start talking about who's here right now, what's that got to do with 6 months from now, man? Somebody is always up in the morning running, getting their miles in, and planning their own career. I only suggest that to you because if these boys want to fight, then get on with it. But the window's short. Your career is short. Get the fights you can get when you can get them, and then get out.
I'd love you, just quickly on that subject, I'd love to get your thoughts on Colby Covington as a promo. A lot of people think he's improved since the very beginning. It seems like fans, he kind of started as a heel, and then for a lot of fans, he kind of has become a face. But then also, with the promos that he's been cutting, a lot of people offended, a lot of people taking it very personally. A lot of people believe he's been crossing some lines. Where do you rate him as a promo right now?
What is this word are you trying to say promo?
Promo, yeah.
There's a promo. What are you saying? A primo?
That's how we say it down under promo.
I gotta tell you, Colby's great. He sticks to the script. He knows exactly what he's gonna do. Nobody's gonna rattle him. He's getting all sorts of attention. He's getting all sorts of opportunities. But as far as a fighter goes, this guy's so impressive. Everybody thinks he's just this wrestler. Then they go, well, he's a wrestler that can grind on you with a great gas tank. Hey, guy, he's a kickboxer. do not mistake the fact that if he will never take you down, he'll still whip your ass. Colby Covington is he's got those flying knees. He's throwing kicks to the head, jabs and crosses, nice and straight, always footwork work, always head motion. I mean, this guy can fight. He can fight all around. I mean, I don't blame guys for not wanting to get in there with him, but at some point, if you want to get the big money, you got to do the big match.
Well, speaking of big matches, it doesn't get any better than Submission Underground 18 this weekend, as the man who beat Craig Jones not once but twice, and the current Submission Underground absolute champion Mason Fowler takes on Vinny Maghalaes. I mean, you declared Mason the greatest grappler alive after his second win over Craig, but what do you think it sort of makes him if he can beat Vinny this weekend?
Okay, so there's a few things, right? I mean, the days of disrespecting Mason Fowler in large part have to go away. I mean, look at what he did just to get locked in there with Craig. I mean, only I could probably tell you without question how hard it is to get somebody to say, yeah, let me do that. And they know how that story, they know how that story is going to end. They're coming home with the silver medal, but if I can make it to overtime, then good for me. If I can make it to the second, nobody actually thinks they're going to beat Craig Jones. So Mason goes through 3 guys in one night just to get the opportunity. That's how confident he was. Then he goes out there and gets the jump on Craig, rinse and repeat, does it a second time. Okay, that chapter's closed. Well, not so fast. Because when you're talking about who the greatest grapplers alive are, it was Craig, for sure. Craig beat Vinny. Vinny beat Gordon. Gordon beat Craig. It was one of these things. So I think you agree with me. But for Mason to come in and beat him when all Mason has to do and think about and study and look at is Craig, has to be taken into consideration. So now can you mix it around, Mason? Did you hone your skills and your game plan for one human being and then went out and had tremendous success? Maybe. Or are you just all around this adaptive and good? And that's what this is going to represent with Vinny. Vinny's a bigger guy. He's got a different game. He's more flexible. He likes to get on top more than Craig. It's just a very different match. And I do think that Mason has something to prove, but I'll stand by my words. He's the greatest alive right now. He's got a hard match coming up, but Mason's a champ for a reason.
Well, I was going to say, what do you think about the opportunity for Vinny here? Because obviously Vinny beat, Craig beat Vinny. I believe it was Submission Underground 13. But if Vinny can beat the man who beat the man, what does that make Vinny? That could make him the greatest grappler alive, theoretically, right?
Precisely. No, I would fully agree with that. And then, Vinny and Gordon got to figure things out sooner or later. They went at it one time, and that match kind of went under people's radar, but it was not a close match. I watched it. It was either 7-0 for Vinny or it was 7-1 for Vinny, but Vinny was very dominant. And Gordon's never been in a hurry to get that one back. Gordon is so proactive and wanting to prove himself and go out and compete with guys. There was something about the Vinny match that he's never even asked. I don't know that anybody's offered it to him, but I can tell you he's never asked anybody that's a promoter, hey, get me a match. I want this rematch with Vinny. So there's something with it. There's a compliment, though, right? Gordon's fantastic. So if he doesn't want to take you on for some reason, it's a big compliment. And, to your point, Vinny might reclaim the crown.
What do you think about Mason's backstory? I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? He was an MMA fighter, I believe 2-0. Then he suffered a concussion in training and then transitioned to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And now here it is, the greatest grappler alive.
Yeah, and, he doesn't get tired. He pushes the pace. He's officially only a brown belt. I don't know how you could be a brown belt when you're walking around with a Submission Underground gold belt, but that's between him and his coach. I'll tell you another thing on Mason. I'll drop a little piece of news for you. The winner of Mason and Vinny will be the champion. They will come back in December. Whoever wins that match will be matched up with 2008 Olympic gold medalist in judo, Ishii.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That'll be very, very interesting. Before we wrap up, with Submission Underground, obviously that's the headliner, but what's a matchup that's coming that people aren't sort of paying the attention that they need to?
Well, I just think that Gabriel Checo was very fun, right? I mean, there's something about this big, likable Brazilian with a mohawk, right? There's just something very fun. Coben's on the card. Coben's always fun. I think if you look at the girls' match that's going to be the co-main event, there's something special there. Both have spent time with Amanda Lowen, who's one of the more dominant grapplers out there right now. One is Amanda's former teammate. The other was a competitor. So they have a little bit of a tie that binds there. I think that there's going to be some really fun matches, but overall, look, it's main event heavy. The championship's on the line. It's Vinny Mason. It's this Sunday, 6 o'clock Eastern, only on UFC Fight Pass.
Absolutely. Submission Underground 18, headlined by Mason Fowler, making his title defense against Vinny Maghalaes. As Chael said, catch on UFC Fight Pass this Sunday, October 4th. Kicks off at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And for time conversion, that is 8 a.m. What a sweet time on a Monday morning here in Melbourne, Australia, and 11 a.m. for our Kiwi friends in New Zealand. Follow the man on Twitter at Chael Sonnen, and of course his excellent YouTube channel. Chael, I feel like we've been greedy with your time, but really, really appreciate it. Thanks for chatting with us.
You guys have been generous. Take care, pal.
It's a great shirt, man. It's a great shirt. I've changed my mind. Thanks for coming into the program.
It grew on you.
Yep.
It grew on. It's growing on me. I don't know about the pocket. Why would they make a pocket a different color? Seems a little weird.